Hello, beloved souls. Welcome to Thursday. I am Hillis, and today is just a continuation of me expressing what trauma is, how we define trauma, how we connect with it. And I'm super excited for tonight's topic because if you've been following this particular series, you guys know that I've been sharing my personal story, been sharing about trauma, what it is, how we deal with it, just through my own personal experiences. And this is what I appreciate. This is what I love doing, is sharing this wisdom and knowledge with other people, with all of you guys. And it just brings me joy to do that, to be that, to live that. Because my lived experience has contributed to the person I am now. It has been challenging at times to be in this space, to understand the experiences that I lived, to be the person that I am now, to be of service, to have these moments of, yeah, I get it, that was rough, that was hard, that was challenging. But before we get into tonight's topic, just a quick announcement. So, you guys, there are still some spaces available for this Saturday for the Lions Gate Portal Trauma to Treasure session, to where I will express the nuances of trauma, how to deal with it, how to move through that, and concluding it with group session. So just go to the link on the screen. That way you can go ahead and reserve your seat. There's still a few spots available. So just go ahead and register tonight. But onward now to tonight's topic. And so, no, like I said, if you guys are doing anything for Saturday, be sure to click on the link in the on the screen, and you guys can, well, not click on the link, but click on the link in the description. It will take you to the space for you to reserve your seat. But on to tonight's topic. How do we define trauma? How do we define trauma? So trauma comes in four separate aspects, and I'm going to go over these four aspects individually. The first one is physical, the second is mental, third is emotional, and the last is energetic. And the first three affect the last, which is the energy. And I will go over all of this in this amount of time that we have this evening. But before I get into the how we define trauma, I would like to hear from some of you guys here tonight. How have you guys defined trauma in your life? What is trauma meant to you? How did you live through it? How did you experience it? What was new? What was different? How did trauma come up for you? And how did you define trauma? How did you live through your experience? And I'm going to check the comments as I go through this explanation of how do we define trauma. So I'm going to first start off with the physical. And if you guys have been following me, you know the story that I've shared about a client where I received a vision of how this started in the energetic space. And as we allowed ourselves to manifest physically in these bodies, in these vessels, we have to allow ourselves to remember who we are, to trigger that catalyst, that moment of like, okay, I know who I am now, to put you on path. And in order to do that, in this or was third density, now fourth density space, we have to have these physical experiences, these physical aspects that really define who we are and put us on path. And so with the physical, It can be something as small as a dislocated ankle, a broken finger, stubbing your toe. This is how we define physical trauma. Acts that send pain, radiating pain throughout the body. We can also attribute the physical to sexual abuse and how that has affected the body and how the body holds on to this traumatic moment and how it begins to shape our habits, begin to shape our routines. Because when we experience physical trauma, we do things, sometimes unconsciously, to keep ourselves safe from experiencing that trauma again. Such as being more cautious when we get up and go to the bathroom in the middle of the night when we stub our toe, or in some of the instances where I've witnessed in having clients having disorders, eating disorders, from times when they were sexually abused. And so when we have these moments and these unconscious moments that define who we are based off of these physical traumas, because they are so deep within us that we create these unconscious behaviors, these unconscious routines to keep ourselves safe from reliving these traumatic moments, these catalysts, until we are able to deal with them mentally. Which brings me into the next aspect of this, which is the mental space. And so, if you guys have any questions as I go, please put them in the chat, and I will review them as I go and answer any and all questions. And so, as we experience the physical trauma, our body holds the memory, which creates the mental aspect, which creates the space of us wanting to feel and be safe, creating these unconscious routines, creating this buffer, if you will, from the mental to the physical to everything from the PTSD that is experienced through these physical acts. But yet, the mental aspects creates this buffer, this space, this energy that does not hold us or define us in the way that it did before. Each physical aspect redefines our personality. So in this instance, we begin to create a new identity of self as we lock and shelve the old presence, the old aspect of us away. A new persona begins to emerge, one that feels safe, one that feels secure in particular environments, situations, or surroundings. And this is only natural because we do our best not to relive these certain experiences that has caused us bodily harm, no matter how small or how large, because we have often trivialized the smaller aspects of trauma. We don't think about it because it's just routine. It's just an odd occurrence that has happened. But yet, we change our habits and routines to fit in the space to feel safe, in the space of putting, protectors on doorknobs or at the foot of our bed, or uh, making sure that knives are put away properly, making sure that we don't touch any tools, these things that we do to keep us safe. And this is birthed through the identity and new persona that is emerging to say, okay, that happened. What can I do to make sure that this doesn't happen again? And everything from the extreme that I've witnessed, from people losing weight to gaining weight to becoming more physically fit, to be stronger so that way nothing like this, you know, could occur again. And that's okay because we have to do what we can to keep ourselves safe. But yet, this is also the catalyst for us to remember who we are. And as we live through this catalytic moment, we then to now have these emotions that come up, these emotions that arise. And in these emotional states, we then begin to allow for this persona to take over, this new identity to take over, to keep our well being safe, to keep our well being sacred, and to only share what feels safe and natural. And sometimes the personality disorders, that arise through the space of feeling safe, or the alteration of our identity, is only natural, because as we live in, or as we did live in 3D, now living in 4D, we allow ourselves to say, okay, wait a minute, what happened? How do I process what just happened? As I shared my story before about what happened to me, when we live in a traumatic experience, there's always the physical first. And then we allow our mental state to try to catch up to what happened. And then we have our emotional state that begins to decipher and understand, what state do I choose to live in? Do I choose to live in a state of fear? Do I choose to live in a space of caution, hate? Or do I want to allow myself to live in the medium before I allow myself to get to full potential of love? And this is the challenge that everyone lives with, because our nervous system creates this fight, flight, or freeze response. And we live our lives through one of those three channels. Whether we're going to stand up and continue fighting for ourselves, exhausting our nervous system, burning ourselves out, or we are going to always run away from situations that we fear and not in alignment with. Or we're just going to simply freeze and say, you know what, I'm not going to deal with this. I don't have the capacity for this. And all states are perfectly natural and fine. It's just when you choose to get ready to deal with it, you deal with it in your own time. When you allow yourself to say, I'm ready to process this. I'm ready to allow myself to feel the emotions, recall the memory, recall the moment, and allow my body to let go. Because when we have these traumatic events, there's so much tension in the body. There's all this energy and information still in the cells. It's just like when we go to the gym and work out, or when we ride a bike, or when we drive a car. It's all muscle memory. It's all autonomous. We just do it. And so our body responds automatically to like situations. And it's in that we then have to allow our body to then begin to process, to let go of that traumatic space. And what I found interesting? I was on Bryce's show earlier this week. If you guys caught that, it was very fascinating what she shared with me about how a woman who gives birth, and if she has a cesarean section, that if her body doesn't fully process the vaginal birth, that a couple of years later, or a few months later, or whatever the time is, that her body will go into labor, because it's still holding on to that aspect of herself. Says, well, I have to push this baby out. And if that isn't fully processed, your body is going to be held in that particular state until it allows itself to let go. So this is what trauma is. If we don't allow it to let go, holds this tension in our body, holds it in our mind, holds it in our emotions, and it does everything that it can to keep us safe until we are ready to process and let go. And so now, what I want to share is the energetic aspect of this, which is sometimes the most often overlooked aspect of this. So in our energetic field, we have our chakras, we have our meridians, we have our auric fields, we have our macabre, we have all of these interlaced and overlayered, intricate systems that is unseen by the naked eye, but felt in many ways. And so with our energetic system, when we feel the trauma, when we have this trauma in the physical space, it is transmitted to the energetic space. Because everything that we do physically is mirrored energetically. And this is the back and forth, the mirror, the exchange of all of this. So when we have this space of remembrance, of knowing these moments that bring up these triggers to allow us to begin to remember who we are at a soul level, the energetic space then begins to mirror that. So if we begin to have these physical traumatic moments, it is then written and recorded in our field. And then if this is a shared if this is a shared moment, see, this is what happens when you go live. So I'll be right back um, as I find out just what happened, because you know, half lit, half dark, half not dark. This is interesting. Um, hmm. Let's be back with you in one moment, everyone. My apologies, technical difficulties here. Um, as this has never happened before. Huh. Okay. All right. There we go. We're back in business. So, that was very odd. That was very odd. Never had lights go out on me before. So, as I was saying, to understand this process, when the physical finally catches up to the energetic space that's mirror, the energetic space holds the memory of all encounters, all interactions, all choices. It holds everything. It's the container for the physical, the emotional, and the mental. So just to reiterate, the energetic field holds the traumatic remembrance, the imprint. It records this data in the field, everything from the emotional, mental, and physical. This is how the unseen energy records and works. And so now that we have that space, what then begins to occur is, depending on the aspect of this traumatic experience, it begins to uh, manifest in different ways. So, for example, with people that I've worked with, if they have been sexually abused, or if they had any experiences of that nature, and what could occur, let's say later on in life, if they haven't fully dealt with the trauma, especially for women, if they haven't fully dealt with this trauma, what has occurred, or for what I've seen in my experience, is that women can often have miscarriages. Women can also not be sexually satisfied. There have been medical uteral issues. There have been all kind of issues in the sacral and root chakra, and that's how it manifests. It also blocks creative energy. It blocks the aspects of being grounded. It blocks all of these aspects when not dealt with properly. So when you have this energy that is recorded in your fields, it affects the mental, emotional, and physical states. So everything that happens in this vessel reverberates out into your field. And then if it's not dealt with in, in a timely manner, or just in general, that field then signals back to the body, to the mind, to the emotions, that you aren't ready for the next level. You aren't ready for this until you accept what has occurred, to allow your body, your mind, your emotions to begin to let this go. It sends out the signal. So it's this self contained container that is in this space, that is expressing itself, the reflection of what you experienced. So this is what the field is. Your own personal field reflects all of what has occurred. And it is in this reflection where we begin to understand, see, feel, know that this is what has truly happened. And so, with us understanding that aspect and having guidance, whether it's me or someone else that you trust, you then begin to open up to the path of remembering your soul, open up the path to clearing your energetic fields, opening up the path to clear the persona and identity that was created because of what has occurred. This identity that has kept you safe. This identity that has molded itself around preservation, survival, and this is all natural. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you at all. It's just our way of dealing with what needs to be dealt with in the time that we choose to. And this is what's most important. If you guys don't take anything else away from tonight except for this particular message, is that your timing is your timing. No matter when it occurs, if it's a few months, a few years, a few decades after you've had your traumatic experience, and trying to understand, why am I holding on to this? Why am I allowing myself to feel this way? Why am I allowing myself to hold on to something that is keeping me from everything else? When you choose to deal with this lower frequency, this hurt, this pain, this suffering, because that's what it is. When we choose to deal with that, we open up the path. We open up the remembrance. We open up our fields. We clear our field. We clear our mind. We clear our emotions. We open up our bodies to be receivers of this wisdom, this light, this information, to move forward. And this is in your divine timing. It's in your blueprint. And yes, people have said, well, why has it taken me so long? It's because you weren't ready yet. You weren't ready to receive what you put in place. You weren't ready to receive what you stored for yourself. You know, it's all in that matter of acceptance, love of self. And when you see that, the divine orchestration of this remembrance, everything else will fall into place. And it takes time. I mean, I was in my 30s when I went through what I went through. Early 30s, when I went through what I experienced. And it wasn't... How long did it take me? It took me about maybe 5-6 years. Maybe a little bit longer. To deal with what I dealt with emotionally. Mentally, physically, all of it, to clear it from my space, to clear it from my field. So don't allow mortality to get in the way. Don't allow yourself to rush through the process of what needs to be fully expressed. And I hope you guys can hear me okay. I don't know if you hear, because I'm not seeing my mic on, but I hope you guys can hear me fine. No technical difficulties tonight, not sure why. But I just say all of that to say, the timing is up to you, dear souls. The timing is all up to you. And so go back will you watch this? If there's any questions, put them in the comments. And I still have room for this weekend for my Trauma to Treasure session, which is a group session where I teach you about trauma, help you understand what it is, and close it with a group clearing. So click the link in the description. Also go to the link that you see on the screen, take you right to the space to register for the few spots that are still available. So remember, dear ones, everything begins and ends in love. Till next week, beautiful souls. Love you all.